On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew Zink, the host of the Ghost of Tsushima Yotei Gamecast. I want to welcome you to the show and let you know that you can reach out to us via email or find us on Blue Sky. All of the links are in the show notes. You can join the Robots Radio Discord to chat with us directly, and you can listen to this podcast on any podcasting platform that you listen to. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Ghost of Tsushima Gamecast. I am your host, Andrew Zink, and we're just going to pick up right where we left off from episode 2. This is episode 3, Act 1, Main Story, Part 2. Last episode was Act 1, Main Story, Part 1. This episode will wrap up Part 1's main story. So, yeah, we're just going to dive right in. We left off completing the quest Blood on the Grass. And that's one of 2 quests to go along with Recruit the Straw Hat Ronin. So in that quest, you reunite with your old friend Ryuzo, but it seems like, you know, there may be little differences between Ryuzo and Jinsakai. So the next quest is the Tale of Ryuzo. So picking up from the first quest, you meet Ryuzo on the cemetery, or at the cemetery, and it's on a hill overlooking Fort Ohira. So quick reminder, Fort Ohira is where you got some information that the Mongols may have taken rice that Ryuzo wants and needs to feed his men, Straw Hat Ronin. So your goal is to raid Fort Ohira and acquire the rice so that the Straw Hat Ronin can assist Jinsakai in freeing Lord Shimura from Castle Kaneda. So, yeah, the quest starts. You arrive at a cemetery on a hill overlooking Fort Ohira, and you see Ryuzo and the rest of the Straw Hat Ronin there. Ryuzo says, you know, everyone who is not sick or starving is present to fight. And, you know, so they're really just hammering home this whole starving aspect. They've been doing it really just the whole time. Anytime the Straw Hat Ronin come up, it's like they have to mention starving. So that's very present again. So then they mentioned that there's quite a lot of Mongols at the fort. So I'm just going to describe Fort Ohira real quick. And again, if you've played the game, you'll probably remember it, but a good refresher never hurts. So Fort Ohira kind of has 2 sections. It's a shoreside fort. It's along the sea, and one fort is right at the base of the sea, so that there's kind of like a makeshift harbor, and a place to land from larger boats. Then there's a second part of the shore that is up on a big cliff top, and there's a lighthouse up there, and that's called the Sutsu Lighthouse. And so again, this is taking place in the Sutsu Prefecture. That's the southwestern prefecture of the southwestern corner of Tsushima, and it's mostly grasslands, but there's some forest, and it's very beautiful. So as you're talking about what to do, Jin makes up a plan with Ryuzo, and he basically says, okay, I'm going to sneak in to the lighthouse. And what I'm going to do is after I sneak in, I'll light it aflame, and then that will be a signal for the rest of you to storm the lighthouse fort up on the cliff. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that first, and then we're going to, because it's a bit more isolated, and then we're going to figure out a way, or that's where they believe the food is. So that's where they're going to start. So right away, you sneak in, and you know, you kind of you don't have to take out a ton of Mongols, but you can if you want. Very consistent with how the game's been thus far. And it's not super hard to get to the lighthouse and get to the top of it. So once you get up to the top of it, you know, you light the signal fire for Ryuzo's men, and they start the attack on the lighthouse. So you have to climb a big ladder to get up top. You climb the ladder back down, and once you get down, there is a pretty cool fight scene where you see a bunch of Ryuzo's men storm through the front gate of the lighthouse portion of the fort. And, you know, you eventually win the fight, and then a cutscene starts. And I have to say, once again, I love this game. I've loved everything about this game, and I love just pointing out just goofy video game stuff. But you know, the cutscene starts and Jin says to Ryuzo, "Okay, let's get your men something to eat." And I don't know, it made me laugh because it almost like you're saying like, let's let them stuff their faces right now. Let's just go find some food, and they'll just cram their faces while we're here. But so then after taking control of the lighthouse after the battle, they find no food at the lighthouse portion of Fort Ohira. So then Ryuzo pulls out a scroll that the Mongols have left behind, and Jin reveals he can read it if it's in, like, I guess he was saying Chinese, Mongolian. And I'm going to do some research about, you know, the language on that, and again, do a bonus episode on that that's more history focused. But Jin says he can read it because he studied to read Sun Tzu, and that the food was taken out to sea on larger boats. So immediately Ryuzo is super dismayed, but they come up with a plan to figure this out. So so what Jin and Ryuzo do is they basically start to survey, you know, from the top of the cliff, and they make up a plan that they'll have archers up on the cliff to shoot at the main camp gate down by the shore. And they very specifically say that there's too many enemies and it's too well fortified for the Straw Hats to like take the whole place. So what the goal is to distract the Mongols to the front of the camp so that Jin and Ryuzo can sneak down the cliffside and steal a rowboat and get out to the larger Mongol food ships. So yeah, you know, as you survey from the cliff, you kind of see that there's a big wagon full of very conveniently placed like fire barrels. I believe they contain gunpowder or oil or something like that. You know, and so they can shoot the cliff. They can shoot that from the cliff and from the front of the fort. And they basically say like, okay, they'll shoot that, cause a big distraction, draw them to the front of the fort, and then we'll sneak back and steal a rowboat. So once the plan is established, Jin and Ryuzo start to make their way down like this. It's kind of like a secret cliff passage, but it's also not super dangerous. You're not really scaling anything. It's a pretty convenient walk, all in all. And as you're making your way down, you continue this conversation that Jin and Ryuzo have been having for a while. And it's about Lord Nagao's tournament. So this comes up again, and this was 2 summers ago, we've been told. So again, it seems kind of awkward in the way it comes up. And it seems like Ryuzo has some awkward feelings about it. And, you know, they're just talking about it. and Jin kind of seems to have more positive memories of it, whereas Ryuzo seems to not. But then Jin says, okay, let's talk about this later, because they reach where they're supposed to, they get down further down the cliffside path. And then they give the signal for the archers to blow up the barrels. This was cool. Huge explosion. The Mongols are confused. They're running around. And then the Straw Hat Ronin archers from the cliff at the front of Fort Ohira, they just start raining arrows down, just distracting them and causing mayhem. So then, you can sneak to a rowboat. And once you get there, you just press, the R2 button. And then it basically just takes you right out to sea. Now, one thing is, you don't have to go straight for the rowboat. You can start to fight people. And I accidentally did that. They just saw me, and so they ran up to start fighting me. So I just figured, whatever, I'll just clear the camp and then just take the boat. But if you do that, then Ryuzo starts complaining the whole time. He says, like, this wasn't the plan. We're not supposed to be in combat, even though, you just start winning overall. I don't think this game is super hard unless you turn the difficulty up, But, eventually you take a rowboat, and then you just end up at one of the big ships. And so you climb up a ladder to get on a larger Mongol transport ship. And you find no food on the first ship. And, you clear a couple enemies. It's not super hard. But so, like, right away, then they go back to this tournament thing. And Jin says to Ryuzo, he didn't know the tournament duel bothered him so much. And Ryuzo confirms that it did, but he doesn't really say why. So at this point, a fight scene starts on the deck of the ship right outside after this conversation happens. And, you clear the fight scene, but then archers from the ship right next to it start to open fire on you. And Ryuzo says, oh, I gave my one bow to my men, so I don't have one. You have to shoot back. So then you kind of just start shooting arrows back and forth between the ships. I thought this was pretty cool, actually. And yeah, just a new environment, just how cool in Act 1, you're out on the open sea on a boat, So then you can make it over to the next ship via a wooden bridge that connects them. So then you do that, you clear that deck of Mongols, and then you tell Ryuzo to search that ship for food, because there's then a third ship right next to that that's connected with another wooden bridge. And Jin Sakai says, you clear the second ship, I'll go over and clear the third ship. Everyone says, like, okay, be careful, let's go. So then you board the third ship via the bridge, and you clear the Mongols. And the one thing I thought was cool about this is you can look over and you can see the battle on the shore at Fort Ohira. And again, you're just kind of seeing flaming arrows, like, flying back and forth. And, you see the burning from where the barrels were exploded and tents on fire. Just once again, I just think this game does a great job of immersing you in the world, and I just can't shout it out enough. So yeah, after you clear everyone on this third boat, you don't find any food. You do find some battle plans, and they kind of give insights onto supply lines, that the Mongols are setting up across Tsushima. So then there's another fight with a couple guys. You get past them on the deck, and you can actually find a bear in a cage on a ship. I'm pretty sure if you sneak, you can let the bear out of the cage and it'll go and attack the guys, but then eventually it fights you too, and you can get, the animal skins from it. I think it ends up not being really worth it. It's probably easier to just take out the guys yourself. And this sounds terrible. I didn't do this, but I watched it in a gameplay video and I was refreshing on this. You can just shoot the bear with arrows through the cage and then just get the pelts that way. But either way, it's cool that and just funny from the game developer standpoint that they add the bear as an option for combat. And it also does raise an interesting question. It does make you wonder, did the Mongols bring animals back from Japan to the mainland? And they probably did. And what would they be? And what was the capture process like? Once again, maybe another historical bonus episode, perhaps I'll release alongside all of this. So yeah, after that, you go back to Ryuzo's ship, and you find a bunch of dead Mongols, and you go inside of it, and you find a bunch of food. And so you're pretty excited. It's like, okay, we finally found this food. We don't have to hear about the starving Straw Hats anymore. um, but so you then hear Ryuzo like cry out, and he says like, "Jin, help me!" So you run to the front of the ship, and you open the door to the deck, and Ryuzo's basically gotten beat down by this what's called a brute in the game. It's just a huge Mongol that carries a really large axe or halberd or that sort of weapon. So then you have to fight him. It's actually not a super hard fight. It's not an actual leader like you've encountered before up to now. Um, and yeah, so then Jin saves Ryuzo. They have a little, banter back and forth. And then the final cutscene for this mission kind of pops up where it shows a Mongol on a fourth ship that's nearby. And there's like a line of archers, and the Mongol commander is commanding them to shoot flaming arrows to burn the ship with the Mongol ship with the food on it that you're on. So obviously super unfortunate because, you then have to run and jump off the boat. And once again, you just kind of get transported back to the shore in the next scene. And you don't actually have to like swim back or anything, but that's presumably what happens. And the Mongol boat burns with all the food on it. So definitely an unfortunate conclusion to the quest. And then, yeah, Jin and Ryuzo talk about finding food for, the Straw Hat Ronin. And Ryuzo says like, okay, I'll take the supply line plans that you found, and we'll raid the supplies, and we'll find some food, and then we'll help you at Castle Kaneda. So the quest kind of ends right there. Good for Jin Sakai, and I guess you think good for the Straw Hat Ronin at this point. So with that concludes the Tale of Ryuzo and the whole recruit the Straw Hat Ronin quest line for now. And so at this point, really the only quest you can do after this in the main story is the quest Forge a Tool to climb the walls of Castle Kaneda. And the quest is called Hammer and Forge. So if you remember, this is kind of what you've been building up to with Yuna and Taka. Taka is the blacksmith brother of Yuna, the woman who saved you at the beginning of the game. So the Hammer and Forge quest is located in the Komatsu prefecture. And that's one of the prefectures on the central western part of Tsushima Island, specifically Izuhara, the southern section that you're playing in Act 1. So then you arrive at the town of Komatsu. And if you remember, Yuna and Taka said that this was one of the best forges on the island. It was located at Komatsu, and that's where you could find them. So you arrive there, and Komatsu has gotten crushed. It looks like just a graveyard. I mean, like tons of stuff is burnt. There's just dead Mongols, dead civilians everywhere. There's this very eerie fog all over the place. There's crows, that classic crow sound, squaw. And it's just dead. That's the vibe you get, it's just dead. So then as you make your way through the town, you find some Mongols kind of like terrorizing some captive villagers. And Yuna then starts attacking them from the rooftops, and you help her, and the two of you then clear them. So then, of course, you reunite with Yuna right there, and you ask her what happened, and Yuna says the Mongols came a few days earlier and just wrecked the whole town. So Jin says that they were scouts, but the main force is going to be coming, probably, the ones they just encountered. So Yuna wants to leave. Yuna wants to run away. And Jin says that they're going to stay and fight because they need the forge. So they basically say that, like Jin feels like this can be to their advantage if they use it the right way. But so he asks, how many are left of Komatsu, and Yuna says it's just a few families, and they're mostly farmers and blacksmiths. And so then as you're walking to the forge of Komatsu, Jin and Yuna really have a good kind of rapport with each other. And that's just like, good characterization, nice to see and have in the game. So then, they arrive at the forge and find Taka, and Jin says that, they'll use the forge smoke to draw the Mongols in so that they can fight them on, their favored terms, basically, at the forge. So he finds Taka, and asks Taka to make a weapon to help him, or a tool to get into Castle Kaneda. And really, we're talking about a grappling hook, something that can scale the walls. So Taka then says his assistant Yukio is needed to make the grappling hook and got separated in town as Yukio was looking for his wife. So this quest, I'm just telling you all right now, this quest just turns into one of those video game quests where it's just like, oh, you have to go here and get this done, and then you do it, and then someone's like, oh, wait, now you have to go here and get this done, and then that just happens like 3 or 4 more times, and it's like, bruh, I just want to craft this grappling hook. But so you set out to rescue Yukio, find him in the town. So as you're making your way through the town, you find some Mongols, you clear them, and then you find Yukio like hiding out in a building, and you rescue him. And then you say to him, okay, we got to go back to the forge. And that's when Yukio says, well, I have to find my wife and sister. And Yukio says they're by the river and they need saving and asks you to go do that. So, of course, being a video game protagonist, you set out to go save Yukio's wife and sister. So, eventually you go do that. You find them, and there's just more Mongols. You clear them in the town, and then you reunite Yukio with his wife and sister. And again, just as you're traversing through the town, it just feels dead. And it's just, once again, just showing you just...
Introducing the new Volvo XC90 with 7-seat versatility, Google built-in, and advanced safety features for all your precious cargo. The new Volvo XC90, designed for life. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
This MailChimp-verific jingle is brought to you by MailChimp.
MailChimp, your marketing with AI and more. Advanced automations to connect to your store. MailChimp, your marketing and boost your clicks. Multi-channel campaigns now with SMS. That's lit.
MailChimp your marketing today with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-on. Visit MailChimp.com.
How deeply upsetting the horrors of war must have been to actually experience for people, because there's just, and they did a great job crafting this setting. There's just bodies everywhere, and everything's burnt, and it just feels really sad and just like not a fun place to be, that's for sure. So, eventually you head back to the forge with Yukio and his wife, and you clear a few more Mongols along the way. And once you get Yukio back to Taka, you say, oh, nice, now we can start the forge. But then Taka tells you that Yuna went off to save a family who is located at a house across the river. And so there's like this, it's not a huge river. It's like a tiny river that runs right through Komatsu. So then you set out, you go to this house to find Yuna. And as you're sneaking up, you kind of see there's like a bunch of Mongols at the house. So of course, you go in, you help clear the Mongols. You can sneak it as much as you can. It probably ends up in a straight up fight at some point. And then Yuna helps you, finish the fight. I have to say, I think Yuna is actually a really good combat companion. And there's a lot of games where the companions don't really do anything, which makes sense because the game developers, they want you to play the game. They don't want your companion to do it all for you. But I think they found a really good balance in this game of a companion that doesn't do everything for you, but isn't totally useless. So I do really appreciate that. You clear the Mongols, and then you find the family that Yuno is trying to save, and you bring them back to the forge. So at this point, we've run around a fair bit, but I like to think we've marshaled all the remaining survivors of the town. So then Jin Sakai tells Taka to light the forge once they're back. Light the beacons, Taka. And at this point, the main fight will start of when the main Mongol force arrives to, I thought they'd already leveled this town basically, but I guess not. They need to extra level Komatsu. So a main fighting force arrives, and then they basically they come in waves, and you have to keep them out of the forge from distracting and attacking Taka. It's honestly, again, it's like a little comical because it's like, Taka is trying to create the grappling hook. He has to be doing it right now as the Mongols are attacking. And I kind of just thought, can't you just hide out for like a second? We'll clear them, and then, then you can make it. But for the video game quest, you're trying to protect Taka from the Mongols. So eventually you do that. You clear through the waves. You fight a Mongol leader, and you can advance, towards getting a different type of stance that those help you, in combat, and you eventually win. So it was a cool fight, and there was a really beautiful sunset atmosphere over the whole level. Like there was, the sun was going down, and it was just eerie. It just cast this very eerie, and that's what's so cool about this game. I mean, there's been sunsets that have been totally beautiful and hopeful and awe-inspiring, and then this sunset was, man, it just cast this very upsetting light over everything, I felt anyway. So then, the final cutscene of this quest starts, and when the fight ends, it shows Taka's face, and his literal jaw is like hanging open, and he says, "I've never seen a samurai fight like that," basically. And then another one of the villagers says, like, that's because he isn't a samurai. And the villager says he's a vengeful spirit back from the grave to slaughter Mongols. So, this is kind of where they don't say the word ghost, but this is kind of where the concept of Ghost of Tsushima starts to come in, which is just cool, and it makes sense. I mean, they feel like they're seeing the birth of like a folk tale or an urban legend or something. They've just never seen someone fight like Jin can. So then they say, and I really love this part actually. Then Taka says, "Where do we run to now?" And Jin says, "We don't. There's no more running. We need to fire up the forge and start making strong Komatsu weapons to fight back." And at this point, that's kind of the end of the quest. I thought that was just a really cool way to end the quest, kind of inspiring. So yeah, that wraps up the Hammer and Forge quest. At this point, you can then start the next quest, which is called the Iron Hook. And it's like there's 2 subquests for Forge a Tool to climb the walls of Castle Kaneda. It's like the same with the Straw Hat Ronin, how there were 2 subquests for that. So the Iron Hook quest takes place in pretty much the same spot, the Komatsu Prefecture, and it's at nighttime. So when you start the quest, you arrive to see Yuna talking to villagers about Jin. And that's when Yuna says, for the first time in the whole game, she says people are calling him Ghost. But Jin doesn't like it. He really feels like, he says, once we save Lord Shimura, we won't need folk tales anymore. He's got this very just straightforward way of going about things. But Yuna says to him, it inspires people, and people need something larger than life right now to believe in. And I thought that was a fascinating concept, because that's often true about humans. We like to lionize figures or events and, just create stories and folk tales out of them. And those things can have huge impacts on populations. So it's cool that they, incorporate that into the game. And then you get where the title of the game comes from. And it feels very organic and real. So I thought that was very, very cool. So then they start walking to find Taka. And Jin tells Yuna the plan of like getting everyone assembled. And this is kind of the first time you've talked to Yuna about this, but you tell her about Ishikawa, you tell her about Lady Masako, you tell her about the Straw Hat Ronin, and, then she says, like, "Oh, it seems like you've really got a good group together here." But she still says she isn't sure if she'll join the fight. And obviously that's a little disappointing, but, that's all you have for now. So then you arrive at the forge, and Taka tells you that the grappling hook is finished. Let's go. Grappling hook finished. Can't wait to use this. So, of course, you think, oh, nice. Now we can head out for Castle Kaneda and get everyone ready. Nope. This is video games, people. That's not how it's going to go. The cutscene ends, and you hear Ryuzo showing up and, like, shouting for you outside and saying, "Jin Sakai, I know you're in there. Come out here." I thought he was about to, like, brawl with me. I was wondering, what is this guy doing? So you go out there, and he tells you that the Mongols captured all of his best fighters, all the best Straw Hat Ronin, and imprisoned them at Fort Yadate. So, oh my God. I mean, right now it's like, I have to bail this guy out again, basically, but so then they set out to free them. Poor Ryuzo, man. This guy just can't catch a break. So as you're getting there, Jin Sakai literally asks him, he says, like, how'd they get captured? How'd this happen? And Ryuzo says, well, the supply lines were really well guarded that from that map you gave us, and we got captured trying to get food. And he says, but I know they're alive because I heard them singing. So Ryuzo eventually says that becoming mercenaries was the only option for him after the duel at the tournament 2 years ago, Lord Nagao's tournament. So again, like this comes up just every quest line with Ryuzo. So then he basically says that Jin beat him so badly at the tournament that I think he felt really hurt. He said that Jin like came at him like he was his worst enemy, and Jin said he just didn't realize he was just trying to win the tournament, but it didn't mean that much to him. And Ryuzo basically tells you that losing the tournament ruined his chances at becoming a real samurai because he had invited the heads of every clan to come watch, thinking that he would do well, and then he lost to Jin really badly. And he said because of that, no one would take him on. And of course, Jin then offers and said, like, well, you should have come to me. Like, of course I would have helped you out and, talked to Lord Shimura. And he said, and then Ryuzo says, I needed to prove myself. And that's how I joined the Straw Hat Ronin. So I think that kind of explains some of the resentment that we've kind of picked up on some of these quest lines before now, and just some of the class differences that exist here. So then, Ryuzo says that people are starting to call Jin Sakai Ghost. And he seems a little bit jealous, like a bit jealous about it. And Jin Sakai says, like, oh, you worried I'm going to get more famous than you? But then they just laugh and kind of banter, and it seems like everything's okay. So then eventually they arrive back at the Straw Hat Ronin camp, and they arrive back to news that 2 men have deserted. And Ryuzo is very upset about this and asks to the remaining people, does anybody else want to leave? And nobody does. So, that's it. And again, Ryuzo is very bothered and he feels very hurt by this. So the next morning, you all ride out to attack Fort Yatate. And Jin says he'll get into the fort and set off a signal for them to ride in and attack. So this is kind of the game developer's way of giving you, your first quest to use the grappling hook. So to get up to Fort Yatate, you have to scale some cliff walls, and you use the grappling hook to swing from trees and get your way up and do all this stuff like that. So eventually you sneak in, and then you can use the grappling hook to swing into guard towers from where you snuck in, and it's a really cool way to do it. And you don't have to take out everybody, but it's smart to take out the guards in the towers, just some of the obvious people that are around. So you kind of roam around, and you can start freeing a bunch of the Straw Hat Ronin from cages and clearing the fort. They don't run out and start attacking. They kind of just start following you quietly. And once you eventually, I think most people end up getting caught, and a straight up fight starts to happen. And at that point, the Straw Hats will actually start to fight with you as you go. So I thought that was cool. So eventually you hit this point where you've cleared this prison camp part of Fort Yatate, and Jin then sets off signal fireworks. And I have to say, they then open this inside gate, which leads them to this outer part of the fort that's very well heavily guarded. And so then you can attack the Mongols from behind, because Ryuzo is attacking the main gate from the front. One thing I didn't get is the main gate kind of just opens as Ryuzo hits it, and they just run through. Other than that, I don't really know how that happened, but I have to say this was a pretty awesome battle. It was really cool. There were just a lot of NPCs on screen. And I have to say, one thing I did is I just threw the sticky bomb explosives that you can get, and they damage everyone in the vicinity. And if you just threw 1 or 2 of those, you can clear most of them pretty quick. But it was still a really cool fight scene all in all, and it feels kind of inspiring. It's the Straw Hats yeah, we're free, and they're rushing in, storming the fort. So pretty cool. And then you win the fight. And then it kind of ends with a cutscene of Jin and Ryuzo talking. And, they talk about how the Mongols fed the Straw Hat Ronin. And he says they fed them really good food. And you don't really get why. But then Jin says to Ryuzo, maybe they expected something in return. And then the mission basically just ends right there. So, yeah, you don't really know what that means. But again, it feels ominous. And I just have to say, like, the whole Ryuzo quest line up to now, it just felt like just ominous and weird. Like, somehow you couldn't trust it, like something was wrong. You obviously got that the whole time with this, like, tournament storyline and just the class differences between them. But even this, it's like, maybe they expected something in return. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They're all free now. Like, and if they fed them, does that mean the food problem's taken care of? And again, wouldn't the Mongols have had some food at this fort that we could find? So that's just, there's just been a lot of talk about the food here, and so I've just been wondering about that. But so this mission ends. That is the end of the Iron Hook mission, and then you can start the final mission for Act 1, and this is just the main storyline of Act 1. After you finish the main storyline, Act 1 is still open to you, and you can still do the other quests in it. So the final mission is infiltrate Castle Kaneda and save your uncle, Lord Shimura. So this starts by you meet Yuna in the Komatsu prefecture, and so the quest starts at nighttime. So then, like, the screen kind of cuts to black, and everyone's just like at Castle Kaneda, basically. So then you're kind of like prepping outside of Castle Kaneda, and you can talk with all your allies who are there. And, the conversations aren't super in depth, but Lady Masako Adachi's there, Sensei Ishikawa's there, even Kenji is there to help out. Kenji, sake brewer Kenji, love him. Yuna's there, which you're grateful for. But the Straw Hat Ronin are just missing. They're just gone, and Ryuzo's not there. And I gotta say, right away, I was upset. I was like, "Are you kidding me? We do all this stuff for you, and you guys, I mean, and like I remember wondering if maybe they got in trouble along the way. Like, you just don't know what happened to them." But so Jin gives a speech and lays out the plan, and while he's giving like an overview of, like, it's almost like drone footage of Castle Kaneda as he's giving this overview. And it kind of shows you how much Jin has changed, because Lady Masako suggests just going in, head first. And Jin says no. Jin says they have to be smart and they need to, like, be strategic and go in quietly. So it shows you his growth throughout Act 1. So then, the mission starts with Jin Sakai scaling the rock cliffs and finding a way into the fort. So you clear, like, this first outer level of the fort, and you just have to make sure the alarm doesn't get raised. So you have to do it in stealth for the most part. And then once this is done, all the allies show up inside the fort. So after this, you kind of divide up tasks of who's going to do what. Kind of reminds me of, like, Mass Effect 2 at the collector base, honestly. Oh, just all-time mission right there. So Jin tells Kenji and Ishikawa to secure the front gate that they just came through, and tells Yuna to clear a path along the cliff. And I guess the cliff is, there's a couple different cliffs there. I don't know exactly which one he meant, but you find out later. And then Jin and Lady Masako go together to clear the next courtyard. So they all meet up at this bridge, and then, you clear the courtyard, the next courtyard, and advance. And you talk to Masako about operating a Mongol siege weapon, the Hwacha. And once again, I'm going to do a separate episode about the Mongol weapons and just the weapons at the time and everything. But Jin Sakai says, like, the Mongols use this to devastating effect, like, against us at Komeda and against me and Yuna. And so this time you're going to use it now and just, like, keep our rear protected, basically. So, and he's anticipating that there's going to be a lot of enemies that pursue them after they free Lord Shimura. So Yuna and Jin then proceed ahead while Lady Masako stays behind to operate the Hwacha. So they clear some more Mongols and make it to the main fort bridge where you fought Khotun Khan in the first fight in the prologue of the game. You got thrown off the bridge. And as you're crossing it, Yuna literally says to Jin, "This is the bridge you got thrown off of? How did you survive that?" And Jin basically just goes, "I don't know." and then they continue on. So I thought that was funny. So the gate is locked, and I mean, there's not really people like manning the walls looking down, so I guess that's convenient. But so then you can just grapple to get around on like a nearby tree and everything, and then you like do some scaling around the side of the walls, and you can find a hole in the fence to get through. So then again, you clear a couple Mongols and you open that main bridge gate to let Yuna through. So then once you have Yuna with you, you clear a lot of enemies in this more interior courtyard in a fight. And then once that's done, you tell Yuna to hold that area while you will go find Lord Shimura. So at this point, you're getting pretty close. And you proceed ahead. And once you get through this next gate to what is like a final courtyard area before you go into the main building, you find Ryuzo waiting for you. Ryuzo, what are you doing here, man? So as you come through, he says that his men are hungry. He says that the Straw Hat Ronin are hungry and starving, and that Khotun Khan has put a bounty on on Jin Sakai's head that is so huge that he has to try and turn in Jin Sakai so that he can get the food to feed his men.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Using a Clorox disinfecting wipe to clean that stuck-on sauce from the stove feels like...
Oh, boy. That tickles. Stop.
It feels like coming home to your needy corgi after a long day.
Best part of the day, finally.
With Clorox, clean feels carefree. Clean feels good. Use as directed.
So I'm just gonna say something real quick here. All in all, like I've loved this game. I think the story has been awesome, and like I think it's an awesome game. I don't care that much about any of this. This was the first thing I thought was like a little bit ridiculous, where it's just like, dude, at this point we've like freed so much of the island, and we're so close to freeing Lord Shimura, and like I think we're gonna be okay on food after this, and all you have to do is just like help us finish this out. It just felt like a big turnaround of a character, basically, but it is what it is. So then you have to duel. This is like, I would say, this is one of the first real boss fights in the main storyline quest, not counting Khotun Khan, like the first one you do where you have to lose. Ryuzo has like a real health bar, and you have to beat him like really using the correct button sequences. You really can't just like mash your way through it, and you can't use your explosives or any of your ghost weapons like the kunai or anything else. So then there's kind of like some dramatic banter during the duel back and forth, and Jin says, "Oh, we were friends," and Ryuzo says, "That was a lifetime ago." And Ryuzo says, "Oh," or you say to Ryuzo, "You've changed," and he says, "So have you, Ghost." So they're getting in these little snipings at each other. Eventually, you beat Ryuzo. All in all, it was a really cool fight. Like, the atmosphere was all... I mean, just... You keep hearing this from me over and over again, but the atmospheres in this game are incredible, and the settings are amazing. And you beat Ryuzo, and you say to him, it's not too late, but, he runs away and calls the Mongols, and he says, like, the samurai's here, come out here. So then he runs away, and, a group of Mongols comes in, you clear them in this courtyard, and at this point, you can enter the main final building to kind of finish this up in Act 1. So you enter the building in another just awesome standoff where, you walk in holding your sword all slow, and then you just wait until someone attacks you first, and then you just like hit the triangle button and it's one-hit kill. So yeah, then you clear the Mongols on the first floor of the inside of this building, and it's clearly like, if you've ever seen, any show or played a game or a movie or just anything about like, Japan from like 1000 to 1600 or something, and you've seen just like a ruling class like building, like a castle that they're living in or something, this is what it looked like. It was super cool inside. It was very clean. It was neat. It was well decorated, and it's like very clearly like, you know, a ruling class residence basically. So yeah, you know, you just kind of make your way up through all the floors, clearing enemies one by one, and they give you the option to do this super cool kill through the doorways. And you know, it's like the doorways are constructed of the classic Japanese you know, like paper but opaque wall material that you see in a lot of, you know, depictions of Japanese media and everything. And so you can do this cool kill through that of enemies. So eventually you find Lord Shimura on his knees to like at the end of the building and at the top of it. And you basically just save him, you just clear the group, and you know, that's pretty much it. And then Lord Shimura says that Jin's father would be proud of him, you know, some very nice, happy characterization at the end right there. And then you enter one last courtyard area with Shimura, and you clear a group of Mongols side by side. And then like all the allies rush in, and they're all happy together and everything. And Lord Shimura is taking the lead with like a speech, and so you can tell right away it's like, oh, things are about to change now. Like Lord Shimura is, you know, gonna rally everyone. And then, yeah, the Mongols send in this big final group to fight, and you and all your allies get to fight side by side, and it's the first time in the game this has happened. So this was awesome. This was just so cool. This is like the Straw Hat Ronin fight at you know, the fort previously, where it's like there's just tons of NPCs on screen. You got all your allies there, and you can use all your weapons, and just a really cool, fun fight. So you know, eventually you win. And, you know, Lord Shimura says that they will fight the Mongols, and that Khotun Khan has gone to the next part of the island. And that's one thing I actually think I didn't mention at this point. After one of the previous quests ends, they give you a cutscene where, you know, Khotun Khan is basically saying that I guess Lord Shimura has like an ancestral home, like his ancestral castle is not in Izuhara, but is in the next part of the island where Act 2 is going to take place, and he's going to conquer it. So he leaves Izuhara and Castle Kaneda behind before Jin Sakai and the allies get there to take it. So at this point, that ends Act 1, and you know, you get ready to move on to the second stage in Act 2 and the central part of Tsushima Island. All in all, I thought this was an awesome Act 1. I thought this was such a cool Act 1. I really liked the quest, you know, and what I also liked that the quests weren't super long. It's like they were just long enough that you did, you know, you had a variety of activities. Sometimes it could be a little bit repetitive, but a lot of games are like that, you know. But it's just like you could get in, do a quest, get out. It wasn't super long, but it was long enough that you got a bunch of different characters. You got tons of different atmospheres, settings. I thought the gameplay was really cool. You know, overall, I thought the dialogue was cool and was good. Yeah, I found this Act 1 to be very impressive, and I have fallen in love with this game pretty much right away. So yeah, that about wraps up Act 1. In the next episode of this podcast, I think we're gonna cover the Act 1 character stories, you know, and that's Lady Masako and Sensei Ishikawa, and then just like any other notable side quests that are worth mentioning. We'll do an episode on that, and then, you know, eventually move on to Act 2. And yeah, I want to do it this way because there's still so much in Act 1 that we didn't talk about in these first 2 episodes. These first 2 episodes were, you know, the main storyline part 1 and the main storyline part 2. We've still got like side quests and just a lot of cool miscellaneous, you know, things across the map and interactions you can find in Izuhara Act 1. So we'll cover all of that and then move on to the main story in Act 2. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening and tuning in to episode 3 of the Ghost of Tsushima Gamecast. And remember, if you are patrolling the roads of Izuhara or any other parts of Tsushima in the year 1274 or on, keep an eye out, keep your belongings close. You never know when you'll encounter a Mongol patrol.